Welcome to the podcast before Christmas.
In our family's Christmas gift exchange, we have a financial limit of $20. We drew names last month, and the results are confidential, and you can't spend more than $20.
If you think putting a financial limit on our gift exchange is stingy, you're thinking wrong.
The gift we celebrate this time of year could never be eclipsed by any gift we give, no matter how expensive or how perfect. So our family takes this time to do the gift exchange, finding the perfect gift for the person whose name we've drawn, and putting a financial limit on it stimulates our creativity.
I read the story about the 727's creation, and the engineers that created that jet were given guidelines, like how many people needed to fit in the jet, how short the runway was going to be that jet had to land on and take off, and how much fuel capacity it had so it could get certain distances. And what they ended up doing with those guidelines is it blossomed their creativity, and they made the perfect jet for that time and air.
This train whistle, you gave it to me as a birthday gift over 20 years ago. Now, I've received more expensive gifts over the years, but this last week when my birthday rolled around, my brother asked me, what's the most memorable gift? The first one that pops into your mind over the years. And this was the first thing that popped into my mind. Very memorable and enjoyable for a 7-year-old.
Wow.
So it was a perfect gift for a 7-year-old, just like the 727 was perfect for the 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
It would be kind of a gag gift for you today, though, right?
It could be, but I kind of want to blow it right now.
Well, why don't you do it before the break?
There you go. All right, we'll do that.
Having a financial limit on gift giving does open up creativity.
And I'm sporting today. I am wearing the blouse that you got me last year. 10 of us drew names.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the odds of this? You and I drew each other's names. But you got me this blouse. And all year long, whenever I've seen it in my closet, it's like, oh, yeah, that's what he got me last year with that $20 limit. And it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It is. It's special. And, you purchased this book for me by C.S. Lewis. It's a
Compilation?
A compilation. Very good. Thank you. Of some of his writings. It's called The Business of Heaven. And every day I can open this book and read a little clips of C.S. Lewis, and it adds value to the moment and creativity to the day.
Well, I have to tell you a little backstory about getting this book. So I'm trying to think, what could I get you for just $20? And so, I thought, tried to think of different things, and I went to the bookstore just hoping that I could find something, but it's hard to find something that I think you would find really valuable. And when I found this book,
There you go.
and it had something for every single day, it was like, oh, this is something he could enjoy all through the year. It just felt like a treasure to me. And I'll confess, I've picked it up sometimes, and I've read, sometimes I'll read the day out of it. And I enjoy that, but I think I enjoy it even more when you tell us about something that's really struck you in this book. And I can tell in our conversation and sometimes in your writings, things that have come out of that. So that was especially fun for the gift giver.
Having a financial limit can help you think more creatively because you can't necessarily get the first thing that you think about. Sometimes you have to go through a few things. So in a way, it actually takes more effort to try and keep it below $20. But having the skill of being able to give, limited, financially limited gifts can be good because you don't necessarily want all the gifts that you give in life to take a big dent on your finances.
Well, the other thing is we don't want to create a materialistic atmosphere in the family or among the community that we're exchanging with.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of C.S. Lewis is one of his books, The Great Divorce. He talks about hell being the place where everybody gets everything they want instantaneously. And hell just sprawls all over the place because as soon as you get what you want something else, and now you're into another area, and hell just goes on forever in every direction. That's the idea about limiting ourselves so that our creativity can take over and we can really experience a piece of heaven right here on earth.
You can give really great gifts that are still limited and meet your other goals as well. And having a limit on a specific exchange sometimes helps with that
And I think
creativity.
communication is really important in
Mhm,
this gift exchange too, of explaining what we're doing with each other and why.
mhm,
I think about that old story around Christmas time that comes out of the couple. They had limited resources, and he decided to sell a pocket watch he had. Um, so that he could buy a hair ornament for his wife, and his wife went and had her hair cut so she could buy a chain for his pocket watch.
mm,
And here they both went and they sacrificed something dear to them to give to the other person, and they couldn't even use what was given because of their own sacrifice. So that's kind of a sad story whenever I hear it. So,
mhm.
but a lot of people have sad stories at Christmas time. They feel they want to express their love and they want to do it through a gift, but the price tag on a gift doesn't reflect our love. It doesn't, no matter what price point that is. And so if we can take it just not off just the price, how expensive is it? It determines how much I love you. If
Mhm.
we can redefine the gifts that we give and really focus on our love for that person, be creative about how we show love for that person, then it doesn't have to hit us so hard in the pocketbook and we don't have to exchange what we want most for what we want now.
Well, so often we see people. I remember some really good friends of mine that every night they would come home and they would look in the refrigerator and there would be like milk in there and maybe an egg or two,
Salad dressing.
maybe salad dressing
Yeah.
and some condiments, but
Mhm.
there was nothing really to eat. And so there would commence a big argument about who was going to go to the store to buy what they were going to eat that night. They always talked about wanting to take a vacation or go here or there, but because they had no planning, they didn't put limits on themselves. They didn't have the wherewithal to even create dinner at night. And so they were nickeling and diming themselves to just exist. And they never were able to build for the plans that they would really like to do in the future.
So
Uh,
there's no
there's
vacation,
no vacations.
there's no purchasing a home.
There's not just renting.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with just renting if you're saving up to buy a home or to do something else that's grand that you want to do. Or, uh, but the fact is, if your habits have not been contained and you have set confines on it, then Parkinson's law will take over and you will spend everything on the frivolities of life that don't really bring any lasting joy or happiness.
A moment ago, when you said that, you said they never put limits on themselves. So when it's time for dinner, oh, they just go to the store, they walk around, and what's easiest or what looks the best or whatever becomes what they spend that day with no
Mhm.
planning for the future of, oh, if I buy this, then I can do this for dinner, but also, use it for this, this, and this in the future, maybe a lunch or another contribution to another dinner.
Or oftentimes it was, let's just go out to eat. And now we're
Uh,
spending, $9 on average more per person than you would have if you had a prepared meal at home.
right. So putting those limits on ourselves can actually boost our creativity. So I clearly remember this when maybe at the end of my, I make a shopping run and oh, it's getting close to the next shopping run and I have a limited resources in the refrigerator. Sometimes that sparks the most creativity when you say, no, I cannot go to the store, but now I've got to figure out something nutritious, something not only palatable, but that looks good, and we're going to want to eat. So, you limit yourself to, no, I'm not going out to buy steaks or whatever it is. I'm going to limit to myself to my resources here. And that's really where a lot of recipes get born too.
Mhm.
Um, s- so limiting yourself can actually bring creativity.
It can, and you're talking about being resourceful with food when you need to go to the store. You've always been very resourceful with food. And when people hear that term come to mind, they might think, that you're always shopping for the best bargains
Or that
that are
you're
out there.
cheap.
Right. But that's not the
Mhm.
case, because in order to be resourceful with our food, that often means having a well-stocked pantry or lots of different things that you may not use every week. It actually could cost more to get that pantry all stocked up. And yet, once you have that, then it allows you to be more resourceful.
And you think about Americans coming across the West and traveling and having limited resources for what they could eat. They had to be creative to make things stretch. And if you just have to do it to make things stretch, it gets kind of negative.
Mm,
Just like if you said, can only spend $20. No, we've got a challenge. The
yeah.
limit was $20. It's completely different mindset. And so Americans, it, in the past, they've had to be very creative, even to get started as a country.
Hmm.
And somehow we've lost some of that. So we really need to get back to it so we can be successful.
Another example is I spent several hours yesterday sorting through a drawer of junk in my garage because on the move, my junk drawer got all shook up
Bounced.
and mixed up. So there were screws and bolts and wires and nuts and odds and ends of things that I could go to that junk drawer and usually find something there that I could fix something in the house with.
Hmm.
And I could have just tossed all that, and I almost did. And I thought, no, I'll spend much more time and energy going to the store every time I want a little screw or a little nail or to hang this picture or to fix this part in the house. No, I just need to spend a couple hours right now and sort through this
So that
and make it orderly. So now I can go to my garage, open the drawer, and get what I want when something happens in the house.
so
But you
then you
did
can be
make
more resourceful in the future. Yeah.
Yes. But you also made a confession to me after you got the bulk of it done. There was some odd mismatched stuff. You assessed it and said, okay, now this part can be thrown away.
It
There you
was
go.
less, it was of less value. It was clutter at
Yes.
that point.
Yes. At that point, your time was more valuable. So you invested some time
Hmm.
to take care of the bulk of it. And then, okay, you had discernment to say, okay, the rest of this goes. And
Yeah.
you're okay with that. You slept very well last night.
Yeah. Yeah. And buying a good gift at the wrong time, that's a bad idea.
There again,
Yeah.
a lot of times people at Christmas time,
Uh-huh.
they have these financial goals. Maybe a couple has a financial goals, but then maybe one of them decides, I want to buy a gift of jewelry.
Oh.
And it's outside the budget.
Maybe
But they
that
still do
hurts the
it.
bigger goal of buying their next home.
Yeah, and so that's one of those times that you need to say, communicate together, here's something I would like to do, but we have this goal. We really want to do this. Which one should we do? And
We
just sometimes it's just the sentiment, knowing the person would like to do that. That means a lot.
couples that are trying to get out of debt, for example, and they've committed to a strategy of keeping part of everything they have in life insurance, and that cash value builds up, and it's kind of like the gold in the merchant's pocket and the richest man in Babylon. It kind of gives them a confidence. Yes, we can do this
Hmm.
because that cash value's there. It's kind of that jingle that he talks about that the gold does in the pocket of the chicken merchant as he's getting wealthy.
Yeah, in The Richest Man in Babylon.
Well, then what happened is one of the spouses decides that they're going to do some fancy marketing and they start dipping into those cash values without the other spouse knowing it.
Mm.
And before long, they're all gone.
Mm.
And the rude awakening happens. And now what? Now there's stress of the marriage, there's distrust, and it's really a dishonest thing to break that commitment that we're going to reach this goal. And now, even if I went out and bought you a fancy diamond ring, Michelle, and we were really planning to take a cruise around the world, that diamond ring's never going to mean much to you, I don't think.
Well, it's going to remind me of other things when I look
Yeah.
at it. And how often am I going to see it?
Yeah.
If I'm going to wear it, I'm going to see it and I'm going to be reminded of that. So we want to make sure that our gifts are being good gifts.
So being resourceful, so important. I remember reading number of years back that when NASA needed to do a spacewalk to fix the space station, they didn't know exactly what was going to be required. And so they ended up choosing a farmer someone who had been a farmer earlier in their life to go out and do the spacewalk because they knew that a farmer could be resourceful using a limited number of tools to make the repair.
Mm.
Brilliant.
And they did, if they couldn't make the repair on the first spacewalk, it was going to cost extra money for a second one. And so that a great lesson in resourcefulness, oftentimes taking a little bit of extra time to prepare and to think creatively with a limited number of resources can be enormously useful in the big picture.
Well, John, I think it's about time that you blow that whistle.
This card game is fun to play and teaches character from the Bible. 52 poker grade playing cards represent hours of fun for years to come. Children, teens, and adults like this game because it is exciting and stimulating. This game is a great choice for family game night and a clever way to turn screen time into family time. Try to contain your excitement as you attempt to collect all of the characters in a suit before anyone else. You can order this card game by clicking on the link in the podcast description, or go to Amazon.com and search Wise Man, Foolish Man card game.
That game makes a great Christmas gift, and you can still get it in time when you order it on Amazon. I'll put a link in the resources for you. And if you're shopping for children who like trains, I highly recommend one of these as well. You can get these on Amazon.com. Don't get the little ones. They don't blow as well or sound as nice. But this makes a great gift, and you can find the link in the resources as well. I'm going to blow this again.
Americans aren't as creative in general as they used to be, and that's bad news.
One of America's most noteworthy attributes was their creativity.
I think some of that creativity spawned, starting all the way back with the Constitution, which created the framework that has allowed Americans to be so creative for so many years. Because if you look at history, the average Constitution lasts a very short amount of time. I can't remember whether it's 7 years or 17 years, somewhere in that range. But the American Constitution has lasted about 235 years now.
That's amazing.
That's given it a huge framework of solidity for all sorts of inventors to build upon.
The French government, or government as it is now, when they fought the French Revolution, which was not too different from the time frame ours was, they've had 14 different constitutions in the time we've still been living under one.
Wow.
To build that Constitution, they didn't really start from nothing, because they looked at the writings of the day, and many of those writings went back to Bible, and they went to the Bible and they gathered the information in there, the knowledge, the wealth, the wisdom there, and that's what they used to make the Constitution. So they built something not out of nothing, but they built something quality, laid the foundation, and then were able to build on that. But they did have to use their creativity to put all that wisdom together and to apply it to how they would govern themselves.
Yeah.
I think of the Boston Tea Party, a lot of people think it was just a bunch of rebel rousers that caused that to happen. But really, it was a creative solution to a problem that existed. You see, those tea ships that were in the Boston Harbor, they couldn't leave, or the British would shoot them because they couldn't leave until they delivered their tea.
Okay.
And of course, the United States didn't want to have to pay the tax that the British government was taxing them on. So these guys just dressed up as Native Americans. They went on board. They dumped the tea over. Nobody knew what happened. It solved two problems at once.
Solved the problem
Very
for
creative.
the parties involved. Interesting.
Another thing on that too is the Americans said, "Hey, we'll drink coffee." And I know as I've read about this, I was like, I wish I liked coffee, but I'm a tea person.
Well, the continuity and the foundation that those events provided, the Boston Tea Party, later the Constitution, that foundation has allowed all sorts of inventors to be super creative. And very shortly after we had the invention of the telegraph, we had the invention of the telephone, we had the invention of the electric light bulb, the steamboat, the airplane. And the airplane, you think that wasn't very long ago. We just passed the 120th anniversary of the first flight. December 17th,
Wow.
1903 in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina.
1903.
1903.
Wow. I knew my great grandfather, who was born in 1879.
Two of my grandparents were born in 1900.
That's
Wow.
just unfathomable how far we've come in air travel in just
Yeah.
120 years.
Well, it's all the way that we think. That's why we need to think more creatively and putting limitations on ourselves and boundaries and making sure that things get done on time. I think of Parkinson's law. However much time is allotted for a task, that's how long it's going to take.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we need to tighten our schedules a little bit and say, no, instead of next year, what about next month?
Yeah.
Mm.
Instead of tomorrow, why not at noon today?
Mm-hmm.
And the thinking around the time the telegraph was made is, people in London said, "Oh, we don't need the telegraph. We have page boys."
Yeah, page
Yeah.
boys.
That's the way they were thinking. They just send it to a boy and he could run it all over London.
Sure.
But they didn't realize. I mean, here
It
we
would-
are
it would
in
be
the
a
vast
big
United
undertaking to
States.
string all the wires needed for that telegraph in London.
Of course, and you look at London or even the United Kingdom, Britain as an island. It's not very big.
Mm-hmm.
They probably didn't really need to stretch their mind to think, oh, someone can get there in just a few hours.
Or communication with another continent. Oh, that's never been done before.
Right.
So to think about doing that was very foreign.
Creativity obviously brings wealth to our lives. Not always monetary wealth, but it brings wealth to our lives and the experiences that we have. So how do we help children to develop this
Ah.
creativity early in life?
Well, I
You
remember.
certainly helped us with that.
Yeah, I remember my college art instructor. He said, don't give children coloring books. Now, that was odd to me because I love to color. I always colored out of coloring books, but I listened to his reasoning behind it. He said, give them blank paper. Otherwise, you're asking them to color pictures that adults have drawn, and then they never learn to draw things themselves. And I thought, I think he's got a really good point. So then when I told you this is what I want to do with our kids, that was hard for you because you'd won many coloring contests as a kid, drawing those kind of pictures.
That doesn't mean I was thinking like an adult.
We did. We just did paper and crayons, and you learned to draw things yourself. And I remember one time I had another child come over to the house, and I said, hey, let's color. And you guys were excited. We got papers out, crayons out, and you guys are all busy drawing pictures, coloring. And she just sat there looking so sad. And I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, I don't know how to make anything. And so, I sat with her and I said, well, what would you like to make? And so I drew a little picture to help her ease into that because that was a very uncomfortable situation for her. She had never known. And so if we can show kids how they can be creative early on in different ways, that really gives them a boost for future ideas of creativity, not just in drawing or coloring or playing, but in building and creating and thinking outside the box.
Jesus tells a story about a master who gave his servants a certain amount of money, each according to their ability. So we're never given something from our Creator that we can't handle. That's his promise to us. And so it depends then on what we do with it. And we know the story. The first two servants, they doubled their resources that were given to them. And when they came back, the master was delighted and rewarded them accordingly. But the one who was fearful of being unable to do something
Or losing it.
or losing, that's the one that was punished.
Mm-hmm.
And even what he had was taken away and given to the one who had been the most creative. And we sometimes forget that we are made in the image of our Creator. And that means we are creative people, whether we believe it or not. I don't know how many times I've heard someone say, well, I'm just not artistic, or I'm just not gifted with money, or I'm just not such and such, No, everyone has an ability that God put in them. And every ability that's given to us is different than someone else's.
In that story of the talents, not only was their creativity displayed, but I think part of the reason creativity was displayed, the master didn't tell those servants how to invest their money.
Not
They
at
had
all.
to go out and be creative, and each one received their own results. The one who wasn't creative ended up getting punished because he didn't have results to show for it.
And something else about that story is the servants weren't told what time the master would come back to check in on them.
True.
So the timing, They couldn't exercise Parkinson's law and say, "Oh, I've got until April 15th to file my taxes."
Yeah.
That's another good lesson about creativity. Don't wait for the perfect time in order to take action. You take action and then you take the time to make it perfect over time.
There is only 1 week left until people are making the biggest financial decisions for 2024. And we have a few things to say about that.
If I had to guess, I would guess that most people, most as in more than 50%, will never achieve their New Year financial resolutions.
But it doesn't have to be that way. And we're going to talk about this and how to make good financial goals next week, right here on Love Talk.